At some point, we're going to realize that this is the last summer that we have with one of our kids. They're going to look to the future and step out and maybe join the workforce or go to school in the fall away from us. And it's going to be kind of a reality for us to walk through and to guide our kids through. Sometimes those realities are hard and can be a dark place for parents. But today in the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Face in the Dark, Dr. Kathy is going to look at this. How do we walk well with our kids into their future, knowing that for many of them, school might be an option or really might be something they shouldn't do? How do we discern or assess which path we should guide our kids to? Dr. Kathy has some important insights. And before we get to them, I want to make sure that you understand this podcast is brought to you today by Summit Ministries. Summit Ministries is a really fantastic partner at Celebrate Kids. Dr. Kathy has spoken there a number of times already this year, and it's really a fun and dynamic place where kids can go and gain important insights about the Christian faith. They have a few openings yet this summer. One that's kind of at the end of the year in Manitou Springs, Colorado, and another that's in Lookout Mountain, Georgia. My son signed up, and if he has any experience like his older brother did, this is going to be a dynamic summer for him to really gain and understand and take on some of the important realities of the Christian faith as really his own, as really truth that he finds and believes in. And he's going to have mentors at Summit Ministries to do that with. This 2-week deep dive worldview camp is really important for kids and helps them work through and process some of the biggest questions they're facing right now. I encourage you to check it out. Just go to summitministries.org/celebrate kids. That's summitministries.org/celebrate kids. Now let's get to some important insights with Dr. Kathy.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So Dr. Kathy, a former college professor, her name is Rachel Garlinghouse, wrote recently in Business Insider that she saw so many kids weighed down by attending college when she was a professor. She notes that oftentimes parents struggle to listen to their kids and place pressure on them to attend college over having things like a gap year experience or going and pursuing a trade or even attending a local community college. When you think of parents today, what do we need to know about college now versus college and the outside world, maybe outside of school, from when we were really college age?
Yeah, I enjoy talking with young people about this, and I appreciate Rachel Garlinghouse's perspective because I would agree that there are a lot of kids in college today who don't know why they're there, which makes it a lack of purpose, and they're just swimming in the quicksand, if you will, there to please a mom and a dad. A lot of people don't know that the dropout rate from college currently is 50% of the kids in college don't graduate after even 5 years. And it's because they don't know who they are and they're changing majors or they're gaming and not earning good grades. There's several reasons, but it's not the healthiest place. It is a harder thing for kids to decide because our kids today are multi-passionate, multi-interested, and multi-able. And as a lot of people don't know, Barna and others say that they'll have 7 careers in their lifetime. It's another reason that they're dropping out of college is that they have all these options available to them and they're multi-talented. And so they want to have 3 majors and 4 minors, which isn't terribly realistic unless you're super wealthy and you don't care how long you're in college. And so it's messier now than it was. The decision is harder. We were more narrowly focused. And certainly for me at my age as a woman, there just weren't as many options. And so it was an easy decision. And we weren't geographically as spread out as we maybe are now from families. And so there was more of a narrow opportunity there. As an example, if you're from the Big Ten, you go to a Big Ten university. Now the Big Ten is spread out from coast to coast. And so it just changes the philosophy a bit.
Yeah. Garlinghouse highlights that many parents struggle to listen to their kids as they're working through that and processing all of that. How wise do you think it is for us to really step back and maybe let our kids drive some of these future decisions as they get to a point of graduation from high school and look to college?
Yeah, that's hard, right? Because what I just said is true. They don't know enough about who they are. We have an identity crisis in our culture because we have a security crisis. We have girls who want to be boys and boys who want to be girls, and it's messy. And we have kids who are creative entrepreneurs, and we have dads who have a right to wonder, will he ever be able to pay the bills and support a family if marriage is in his future? So we have to walk with them and we have to ask them the right questions. Don't just answer their questions, but ask them the right questions to get them thinking about, how do you want to live your life? What's going to matter to you 10 years from now? Family, friends, culture. If culture is going to matter to you, then you don't want to live in the, cornfields of, Iowa. And I'm not picking on Iowa. Iowa's a beautiful state. But if you want culture, you're not going to want to live in the cornfields of Iowa. So help your kids identify, who are you and why are you who you are? And what does it mean for your future? And does family matter to you? Then you're going to want to stay, if you will, close to home. I think we listen to them and we help them reflect, is your thought about yourself realistic? What's the evidence? What's the proof that you've been called to this or created to do that? And we create conversations, Wayne, where we talk about, this is what I've noticed about you. Since the time you were 11, whenever you talk about this type of topic, you get very energized and your face just has the broadest smile. And whenever we talk about these kinds of topics, you get pretty withdrawn and you isolate and you want to change the subject. So I'm just confused about why you think that moving in that direction in your future would be wise. Help me understand that.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I think those are really helpful, ways to engage that conversation and walk through it. One of the other things that Garlinghouse talked about was this idea of, gap years or a trade or things of that nature. What do you think of those paths for kids, and what should we consider as we have conversations about the future with our kids?
I like to say that I would prefer that all high school graduates be college worthy, meaning that they have the character and the discipline to handle the independence and the studying that is necessary in college, and the focus and all that would be required, the independent living. Even if they live at home while they're a college student, which is not a bad idea, there still is independent learning that begins to take place. But I don't think everyone should go to college. I think if the call upon your life requires a 4-year degree, then you need to go because God wins. But if you're familiar with the smarts that we teach here at the ministry, we have a lot of young people today who are very logic smart. They think sequentially, cause, effect, comparison, contrast, order, and exactness is important to them. And they're also very body smart. And they think very well movement with their hands. They're going to be contractors and plumbers and electricians and truck drivers. And we need more of them. And those are good careers that can't be outsourced to India and can provide for a family. Just like being a doctor. A doctor would be another example of a logic smart, body smart profession, actually. And that would be a 4-year degree plus school after that. And is your kid designed for that type of perseverance? If he hasn't enjoyed high school, why would you suggest that he should go to something that would require 7 more years or whatever it is of education? So these are the conversations that we have. I'm a huge fan of a gap year where an immature high school graduate or a high school graduate that is not confident in what he or she wants to do takes a 9-month or 7-month or 12-month period of time. They don't sit on their mom's couch and twiddle their thumbs. They go to a program like Summit Ministries Gap Year, or Lamplighter has a great gap year program for Christian creatives. Or you go to the mission field and work with your uncle or a family from your church that your church supports, and they're in Thailand. And you go for a week and you serve as a nanny so that mom and dad can do an even better job for the gospel. So you do something and you discover yourself there in that gap year. And the goal, of course, is at the end of that or before it ends, this kid has a greater potential for success in the future because he or she has found what the future might hold.
As Dr. Kathy was encouraging us today, I was reminded of a passage that comes out of 1 Samuel 17, and I'll begin reading at verse 12. Now, David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time, he was very old. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to the war. The firstborn was Eliab, the second Abinadab, and the third was Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3rd oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Now, I don't know if you realize, but this passage comes in kind of an important time in the history of Israel, especially looking at the history of David. This is a time when many men took on the responsibility of going off to war, and that almost was their job or their expected next step after they had grown up. What's fun here is that David was the youngest and was following back and forth with the army and also tending his father's sheep in Bethlehem. And looking at the dynamic of what David experiences, it might be a little bit of a bright light for us in this moment to think through that sometimes our kids, rather than needing to have maybe a chart or a career path that they jump on, that it's way more important for them to have a character or really characteristics that will carry and steady them in important times, as we will see later if you keep reading in 1 Samuel 17. David had characteristics that were built in his experience being a shepherd, tending to the flocks in the fields. He had really some important times where he built courage and resilience. He was trusting in the Lord. He sang and found his hope and solace really in understanding that God was sovereign and working in his life in really unique ways. And all of this happened because David just built character in different settings where he was. I wonder if when we look with our kids at their future, if we really talk to them more about being a kind of person rather than being a person who has a kind of career. Maybe giving them some space to process that and to think through that, even to struggle and wrestle and maybe be scared sometimes, can really build some resiliency for them and really some trust in who God is. I think doing that might be the best gift or maybe the brightest light that we can give our kids as they face dark times ahead. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment, Facing the Dark. As a reminder, this episode is brought to you by Summit Ministries. To check out more on Summit, their 2-week deep dive for high school and college-age kids to work out and wrestle out their faith, similar to the way that David does almost in this passage. I encourage you to go to summitministries.org/celebrate kids. That's summitministries.org/celebrate kids. Thanks for listening today, and on behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.